Okay, my friend Henry Schipper has a new book. It is called The Ball Dreams of the Sky. At age 70 plus, Henry has just written his first book of poetry. After a long career as a journalist, TV producer, writer, and all sorts of other fun things that he's going to tell you about. And it's quite a career. Now, we're going to start off with the book and how he became inspired to write a book about baseball poetry. Let's just start right there, Henry. Jump in.
Well, uh, I got inspired because a close friend and I, whenever we would meet, we would say, "How are you doing?" And we would answer in baseball terms. "Oh, I'm, I'm, I'm winning. It's a slaughter. We're creaming these guys." Or, or conversely, "I'm striking out," or "I can't get a hit. I can't get on base." It's that kind of a day. And we played with that for a long time, for really a couple of years, and we found that whatever the situation was, we were able to communicate effectively in the language of baseball how we felt. I mean, with complexity, not just in broad strokes like a home run or a strikeout, but nuanced. And so this idea kind of took hold for me, which was how how much could the language of baseball really express? Were there limits, or could you pretty much express everything? So that is what motivated me. I explored that, and I found remarkably that pretty much baseball can communicate pretty much everything.
Yeah. Now, I forgot to mention that upon its release, it hit the top 20 on Amazon.
It did
Top
indeed.
20. Now you have to go into the various categories, but it hit the top 20, a book of baseball poetry that Henry was working on for what, 5 years, 6 years?
Uh, I started nibbling at it a long time ago, but it was the last 2, 3 years 2 years really when I made it happen. And yeah, it hit the top 20 in baseball books and in inspirational books.
Yes.
One
Okay.
of them was 19. I can't remember which one made 19, and one of them was 20.
Well,
And the
yes.
reason it took off a couple of years ago, Jeff, was because I had unexpected emergency double bypass heart surgery. And this idea, for whatever reason, this idea meant a lot to me because of my love of baseball. It was a project that had a lot of love, and I really didn't want to miss out on it. So I thought, here I'm going in for heart surgery. I don't know how much time I've got left or how that's going to turn out. And I promised myself if I could do it, the first thing I was going to really, other than practical matters, the first creative project I was going to zero in on was this baseball book. So it really was from the heart, and that's why. And I was very serious about that. Uh, my sense of commitment was very real, and so within 6 months I had written most of the poems.
Amazing. And why poetry?
Don't know. It's just the way it came out. It's just the way it wanted to express itself. I I I've written, I've been writing poems on the side, never seriously, but for, 15, 20 or more years. And there's always something about poetry that was a beautifully expressive and liberating way of writing. Because most of my writing, as you know, like yours, was journalism, was prose, was scripts, was emails, was linear and logical and rational, and here you have a way of writing that opens itself up to unexpected shifts and surprises and ways of expressing yourself, and so you access more of yourself. You're freer to access more of who you are, and for this book, which was so personal, that made sense.
Well, it's such an achievement to have pulled off at this stage of life, particularly, right? Or at any stage of life, but at this stage, even more so. How do you feel? How do you feel now that it's out and alive?
Well, I'm so gratified that I finished the project. It's hard when you dream, you have a, you think this would be a great idea. Wouldn't this be great? I mean, I've had many of those ideas. I've never actually pulled one off all the way, taken it to the finish line. Because work has always gotten in the way, and there were a lot of, I mean, I'm not complaining about work. It engaged me in many, many ways, but to have an idea that I really cared about, it felt very meaningful to me at, in, at a very personal level. And so to make it real and to pull it off to my level of success. In other words, what I thought I've written in my mind, as I've done it as well as I can. And, and that felt very, very good. And then seeing it out there and, and getting reviews and, holding the book, extremely rewarding. It's magical because you know, you just have an abstract, you have something in your head that's nothing. It's just a little dream. And then to see it in reality is a tremendous, it really feels good. And you figure, I did it once. What's next?
Yes. Tim Kurt, how do you pronounce it?
Kirchen,
Kirkchin?
Kirchen, Kirchen.
A walk-off hit for all fans. Ira Berkow, the Pulitzer Prize winner, New York Times former sports columnist, Robert Frost would have been delighted, as did I, in Henry Schipper's distinguished collection of baseball poems. And as I said to you when you read that to me, that's it. That's it. There's nowhere else to go from there. I mean,
That's true. I couldn't believe that because Ira Berkow really is, he was a guy who I read for decades from the New York Times. He was a literary sports journalist, so he was a really cool writer. And for him to, I called him up. None of these people I knew. I had to find contact info. I found his number, in today's version of the phone book, meaning what's his phone number in Google, and sure enough, a number comes up that looked credible in New York, and you know, and to my amazement, he said, "Sure, send it over." So one thing led to another, and I was amazed at what he wrote.
okay, well, let's go backwards. I want to, for people that are just reading the book and don't know about you, it all started at a little community newspaper in Marina Del Rey called the Argonaut. Actually, there was the real paper before that, wasn't there? In Boston?
Yeah, I had a meteoric rise at the age of like 24 and 25 in Boston, where uh, I was writing for this really cool paper, which was like the Village Voice of Boston. And to everybody's amazement, mine most of all, I was, you know, getting a lot of success as a feature writer, writing these large, long stories that were more essays than feature articles, and really being, celebrated for what I was doing. The problem was that it was unbelievably stressful for me, and I agonized over every article. And I thought, as gratifying as it is to finish one and know that it's really great and you get all this feedback, I can't sustain this. It's torture. So I thought I need to go to boot camp. So I found this paper, this local paper, the Argonaut, where instead of being a little journalistic star, I was just a grunt. I had to do everything at the Argonaut. I was the only person in their editorial staff. 48 pages a week we had to fill up. A lot of it was ads, but a lot of it wasn't. Fill up with everything you could imagine. And I had to take the photographs and write the cut lines and help with the layout on Wednesday night, and had a mountain of materials that I had to wade through. But what it did, I did it for about a year, and it destroyed my fussiness to a large extent about, first of all, it taught me how to write a lead quickly and just think, okay, what's the lead? Let me think of the lead. And, within minutes, you could come up with a lead so you could get started. So anyway, it was very, not to get too caught up in the Argonaut, but it was very helpful and necessary. And after that, that's when I met you.
Yeah, well, the good news is the Argonaut is still alive.
It's
It's still
incredible.
there. It's still coming out every week with stories about boating and whatever's happening in the marina.
Parades,
Yes, parades.
profiles,
We met
business.
we met at the Hollywood Reporter. You were the city editor, if I have that correct, editing copy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, which is a Hollywood trade paper. That was the number two to Variety, and we wrote about the labor unions and slate stories, what projects are in development, who's been cast in what, who's going up, who's going down, that sort of stuff. And that led to you being the labor guy.
Yes, that's true. I was the labor guy. Suddenly I was a hardcore reporter. It was so far from where I had started in Boston doing these really kind of big cultural pieces. And now I was like in a daily pursuit competition with Daily Variety for like some super inside story about labor, who was considering, going on strike and what were the demands and what was management preparing in response and so on and so forth. Honestly, I hated it. Uh, I wasn't built for that kind of stuff. I was pretty good at it, which was funny. I mean, I did it well enough, but I didn't enjoy it. And so as you may remember, I quit after about 6 months, 8 months, something like that.
And went straight to Variety?
No, I just said, I need a break. This has been grueling the last couple of years. I said, I just need to hang out on the beach and stretch. So
Hmm.
I did that for for the summer, and then I got a call from my rival at Variety, who did cover the labor beat there, Dave Robb, the
Yeah.
greatest reporter and one of the greatest guys I've ever known. And he said, "There's an opening, Henry. It's for music." He said, should I mention your name?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't know anything about music, and I certainly don't know anything about the music industry." He said, "Don't worry, don't say that. Don't
Mhm.
worry, it'll work out." And sure enough, it did. I stayed there for 3 or 4 years,
Okay.
which was the same thing, a super grind, but a little more, uh, you know, we were pampered, and because of as
Clout
you
of
know,
Variety, the clout.
the cloud, people were just lining up to sort of, please do this, please do that, so it was a funny thing where the work was exhausting and never ending, it seemed. I had to review at night and do reporting during the day. Anyway, all of this qualifies as preparation because it turned me into a hardened, producer where I could actually crank stuff out. And there was never any question again, could I get the article delivered on time? I figured that out and that was done.
Yeah.
So
They also had a later deadline at 5 o'clock, if I recall.
that's true. That's right.
Hollywood Reporter was 3.
Oh,
Yeah.
terrible.
Just for anybody watching, deadline is now always. So there's no such thing as a 5 o'clock or 3 o'clock deadline. You went to Fox Entertainment News from Variety?
I went to, yeah,
Tell
well,
everybody about that.
I, um, a, a colleague at the LA Times, Bill Nadelsater, an incredible reporter and writer and great friend, got hired by Barry Diller to do a kind of more prestigious version of Entertainment Tonight. In other words, this would be the real reporting, not just legs and celebrity, but actually, dig into what's, the nuts and bolts of what's happening in the entertainment world. And so he hired Bill to do that at Fox. This was when Fox was run by 20th Century Fox, not by Rupert Murdoch Fox.
Right.
And so Bill invited me to come join him in TV. And, I kind of took to it like a duck to water. It was so easy. I mean, on one level, it was so easy compared to the writing piece. Actually, it was quite challenging, but parts of it were easy for me. So it was an interesting challenge to do.
And from there, you met Marilyn Monroe. Tell everybody the story about how you met Marilyn Monroe, her
We, we,
film clips, I should say.
we were a privileged little unit within 20th Century Fox with Diller. And anything we thought of, that were interested in checking out, he gave us the go ahead. So, uh, you know, uh, I realized that there was a lot of archival material, really cool archival material of old Hollywood that was in the vaults, both at the station that we worked at, which had been in Los Angeles since the beginning of TV, and also with 20th Century Fox in their vaults. And so I started researching, and I found all sorts of interesting local stuff of Marilyn Monroe and did some pieces based on this footage. And it was very evocative and all sorts of stuff that you'd never seen before. So I thought, I wonder what the studio has. And I asked Diller, uh, could I explore the vault the salt mine in Kansas City, where all of the footage, the old films and the unused films and the half-made films are all kept are all preserved. And so he said, sure. And next thing I knew, uh, I found out that there were 8 hours of never seen footage of Marilyn in the film she was working on when she died, called Something's Got to Give. It was halfway finished, or even more than halfway finished, but then shelved when she died. Nobody said, well, nothing can be done about it now. So I said, I'd really like to take a look at it. Next thing I knew, all of that was in my hands, and we had a screening, me and the editor, Ken, unbelievable editor, and uh, and we looked at this. We watched all 8 hours of it, and we just said, "Well, we certainly have a documentary here," and so we made one, reconstructing the movie in large part and telling the story of what Marilyn was really like at that time. Um, what was going on in her life, and where she was at, and it was very revealing because it went against the narrative of Marilyn as a mess who was sort of falling apart. She actually was glowing in most of the footage, and we dug out the backstory, which was a very interesting thing. So it ended up being. Diller put it on prime time as a prime time documentary, made me the host over Charlie Rose. He said, "You found it, you're going to host it." I said, "Okay, great." And so suddenly I was like, there it was, and it was phenomenal. And that made me think that's what I'd rather be doing than daily news. An hour-long doc. He gave me 6 months to do 1 hour. So I decided that was my future.
And from there,
I just
Fan was canceled. The Fox Entertainment News was canceled. Did you go on the road to Europe after Maryland, or did you do other stuff?
No, I went on the road after Maryland and needed to take. I I just uh, sustained stress is not healthy for me, and I stop enjoying what I'm doing. So that's constantly come up in my career where I need to take a break and call a big time out. And so I left Fox when I was really at my most successful moment. I was an on-camera reporter with all sorts of prospects, and kind of, I just got this Maryland thing out there, and I just said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's been 3 years, 4 years of just, it just continuous. It never stops. I need a break. So I took a break and spent a year in Europe just improvising, and that was a tremendous thing that I've never regretted. And when I came back, I just said, forget the daily grind. I'll do the documentaries and see what that's like. And that worked out.
And was that biography or Modern Marvels?
It started with biography. I went from Maryland to Elizabeth Taylor. Then I did an unbelievable job on the life and thought of Sigmund Freud, which was just the challenge of that was to squeeze that into a 52-minute hour. I think it was 52 minutes at the time. Now it's 42, but meaning that the rest of the time is commercial time. You have 52 minutes to basically unpack in language, that a History Channel and A&E audience, which is pegged towards a 12-year-old, can understand, breaking down the essential concepts of Freud. And it was a thrill to get into that material. So we did that, and then Modern Marvels came along, which was an incredible classroom for the country because 550 hour and 2 hour long episodes on everything you could imagine. How does that work? How is that made? What is electricity? What about airports? What about runways? What about cattle ranches? What about bridges? And every so I was the educational aspect for me, because as the producer, you had to learn about this stuff on the fly, was very, very rewarding. I was very grateful to that. And to Don Cambu, another tremendous writer, producer. He was the executive and dear friend. So that was a great.
Do you have any episodes that come top of mind? I think we've talked about it. Was it the Bay Bridge or the Golden Gate Bridge that you worked on?
Bay Bridge was unbelievable because of the things you get to do as a producer, which you would never do in your right mind otherwise. I mean, you know how it's a suspension bridge and there's the giant cable that curves up to the top, way, way up there. And the guy said, we were always thinking, where can we get the best shot? And I'm talking to the handler from the Bay, we're saying, and the cameraman saying, well, obviously, if we could get to the top of that, is there any way to say, yeah, you can climb it. So the two of us got harnessed up and we climbed step by step from the concrete driving level of the bridge up the cable to the top of the bridge.
Uh,
We're like, it was harrowing but exhilarating. And then when we finished that, he said, well, now that you've done that, you have to go to the bottom underwater where there's the anchorage, which is a house that of concrete that holds the whole bridge centrally, in place. And so a little submarine took us down there, and you can go inside and hang out there. So you explore these things, and it's incredibly cool thing to do. Many, many wonderful experiences. That was a great one. Um, you know, bridges. I did the Tower Bridge in London, which was an incredible experience to be in London doing that. I did uh, uh, the Crumbling of America, which was a 2 hour special on the state of our infrastructure, which was a very worthy and important thing to be doing, just kind of um, getting inside the reality of the politics of what we're up against in the country, more relevant today than ever. But it wasn't just infrastructure, it was all sorts of stuff: cattle ranching, sex tech, whatever that was, crash testing, plastics, et cetera, et cetera.
I forgot to mention you also were doing long extended interviews with people for Playgirl and who else during this time?
Well, I did Playgirl for a couple of years. That was a lot of stuff. That was in the print days. And Had Playgirl, had Boston Magazine. I had some roots in Boston that kept me going. I had Mother Jones, Ms. Magazine, sort of all the stuff that was happening in the mid to late 70s and early 80s, progressive, things like that.
Okay. And from Modern Marvels, did we switch right over to Unsung, or was there something in between?
There was a lot of little stuff in between, but the main thing that I went to, there was American Gangster, which was a really, um, horrifyingly good series about the roots of the gang scene in every major city in America. It was for BET, and and it was a very responsibly done series, but so scary because of its material that it was difficult to work on. I did one called Philly Black Mafia, which to this day worries me. Will there be payback, 20 years later, for getting into that, inside that story? But anyway, after that, then it went into the other one that you mentioned, Jeff, Unsung, which Mark Rowland had developed, my dear friend and an incredibly talented person. He developed it for A. Smith and Company, and that is the greatest biographical series, bar none, in terms of body of work focused on a particular area. So it was African American artists, mostly musicians, but also TV, actors, comics, et cetera, et cetera. And the premise was that, because uh, of racism, black people will not be getting the credit that they would be the attention that they'd be getting, given their gifts and given their achievements, that they would be getting if they were white. So they were unsung. So that they were just almost categorically, uh, you know, uh, an unsung population or under-heralded population. And it turned out to be incredibly true and powerful. We did over 200 episodes of that, and the stories were unbelievable, and people were dying. Shortly, in many cases, shortly after we would do them. And Unsung saved this. It created a tapestry of cultural history, of Black cultural history that no one had zeroed in on, and it's a glory. That series is incredible. You can go to it randomly and you'll find stuff on there that just is amazing.
Some of the notables that you worked on?
Uh, Tammy Terrell was an incredible story. Uh, um,
The
Dick
former co-singer with Marvin Gaye who died in
Marvin
his
Gaye, but
arms.
unbelievable story on her own, like tremendously talented. So many of these people who had on their own had three or four or more great hits, but and incredible talent, but didn't go to the level of Stevie Wonder, Aretha Franklin, or Marvin Gaye or Diana Ross. There's like 10 that morphed into superstardom, but no one else got any attention. Even groups like like the Ohio Players who had tremendous success, and many many others. But and that was a great show too, the Ohio Players. But my favorites
Favorites. Okay, cool.
were Dick Gregory, the comic, an incredibly unsung talent and influential person, and uh, out of the box character, who just was so original. He was just an American original, a tremendous guy. And then uh, one day I said, you know what's unsung? Disco is unsung. People put down disco. There's still a lingering feeling that disco was kind of a joke, but it wasn't. It was tremendous music. Let's do that. And not only that, it was primarily black music, not entirely, but largely. And that was an incredible 2 hour special that
Two
we did.
hours. Dick Gregory was 2 hours also, right?
No, Dick Gregory was 1 hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had to morph that life into 44 minutes.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And Sammy Davis, believe it or not, it's like, well, he's not unsung. Well, when you get into his life, he's unsung. As celebrated as he was, the level of talent was not really appreciated. We did an hour on him. It was mind blowing. It was very gratifying, very rewarding. And you're friends with Sammy.
I was, yes. I was the tall man, as you recall,
The tall
what he
man.
called me. You're the tall man as well. The You left Unsung, what, 5, 10 years ago?
7 years ago, and then went to work with another incredible guy, Brian Knappenberger, and his company, Luminant Productions. Brian was always developing really, really socially relevant, important programming. And he brought me on board, and I worked with him closely on 4 or 5 large Netflix projects that uh, the last couple were not 9 episodes, 10 episodes, I think. And the ones before it were anywhere between 4 to 6. So they were, big, sort of drop them and binge watch them. And, it took a long time to get them going, but they were really, really strong stuff.
9/11.
9/11, the 20th anniversary of 9/11, that was an incredible sort of look back and deconstruction of everything that happened. I think it was 4 hours, might have been 5, might have been 6. And then we did the birth of the bomb in the Cold War, which was incredibly relevant, and that was a long one. One of the best things I've ever worked on was one of the hardest. It was called The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. And if you look that up, watch it with care because it's the story of the failure of the child welfare system in Los Angeles County, and a little boy who, despite endless signals that he was being abused, terribly abused, uh, was not rescued. And the the series that we did just takes that apart in every single way you could imagine. It's just so comprehensive what happened from every point of view to try to find some level of accountability and to put a fire under the county government to try to prevent that from happening in the future. It's called the Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. Unbelievable.
And I think you hung it up about 2 years ago to concentrate on the baseball book, correct?
I did exactly, exactly, and that was just. I was like, if I'm going to do this book, I'm going to have to create time because work is not allowing time for me to do that. So I said, let me get this done, and then we can see, after that where I'm at. So I
Now,
finished it
Uh,
Jeff, I got to say, your question about how does it feel? Anybody out there with a project that they love, with an idea that feels dreamy to them, it's the best feeling to pull it off. It doesn't matter. It's not a matter of sales. It's not a matter of,
right.
it has nothing to do. It's like, it's just you did it for
You
you, and
did it.
that's
You
key.
did it. You did it. It's here. And it's here. And you stood up at a bookstore and you had 50 people in the audience and you read poetry and they listened to you. This is your little pipe dream. I think I'm going to write something like this and I'm going to do something with it. And then it became real. And you're in
Yeah,
the top 20 on Amazon.
there you go.
Come on. Before we go back to the book, all those shows we talked about, if you had to pick one or two that just said this is the one, this is the one I want to be known for, what would it be? Because there's so many. What do you do? 500 shows? I've lost count here.
An enormous number. I think my favorite. I mean, I'm a political guy. I'm sort of a left-wing political guy going back to the anti-war movement of the '60s. When we did the series American Gangster, in every episode, where there was always an OG historian, the guy who was the elder, in that particular city, who knew the history, had come up with the crew and knew the history, and how it all began. And literally, without exception, they always would reference J. Edgar Hoover and something called COINTELPRO, which was Hoover's program to uh, neutralize activism in the Black community. It specifically targeted Black leaders at all levels. And that was a point of tremendous disillusionment in the Black community. And as a result, and so they're saying that was a major factor in the development of gang culture as an alternative, as some way of expressing power or of finding some room to experience some sense of taking matters into their own hands. So I thought, well, the real American gangster, maybe it's not any of these people, maybe it's J. Edgar Hoover. So I pitched that, and to my astonishment, the final and last episode, number 30, was American Gangster J. Edgar Hoover. And that story turned out to be unbelievable. Unbelievable, especially from the point of view of race. No one's ever really just narrowed in on J. Edgar Hoover in relation to race. And the things we found, the people who we found, from going back 30 and 40 years, African Americans who had been victimized directly as a result of his policies, who had suffered direct violence and so on, and reporters from the '60s who covered the civil rights movement. It was very, very intense. Um, so yeah, I mean, that really, I'd probably single that one out first.
Is it on YouTube? Can you find it?
I don't know. I don't know.
American Gangster was done for what network?
BET.
BT. Okay. Well, we'll all have to look it up. Why don't you close off with a poem? You have the book there, right?
I do. I do.
Pick out a poem that means a lot to you.
All right. All right. Why don't we do, hang on a second. All right. Let's just do, this one was the first one. When I did this one, I said, well, okay, I got one. If I can, this one I felt it's kind of like, the creator is like after the first day, the comment is, and it is good. I felt that way about this one, and it is good. And so I felt hopeful about the whole project. This poem is called Body and Soul. The bat is physical, inches and ounces, swollen at the head, all about the grip and hitting. The glove, like the brain, a complex web with separate lobes, layers of stitching, organically poised to catch a thought. The ball comes to life in flight. Its essence is its potential. Like spirit, it soars. Both bat and glove dream of the ball. The ball Dreams of the Sky.
which of course, that's what it's called. Where can people get the book?
You can get it on Amazon or you can order it through any Barnes and Noble. It's on Ingram Spark, which puts it in all of those bookstores. Easiest thing to do is Amazon, but you can get it pretty much in any bookstore these days because of Ingram Spark.
Right. And just if you do Amazon, just look up Henry Schipper, Schipper. You're working on the next one now. Do you want to tell us anything about it or keep it
Oh,
under?
it's an amazing. I can't. I'm pretty close to finished. It's not poems, but it's an exploration of visual experience. How we use our eyes and how we might improve or expand. I'm not talking about 20/20 vision. I'm talking about visual experience, like how you take in the world and the sorts of the way that you experienced visual material. So I don't have my pitch down for that book, but trust me, it's a really, really cool area of inquiry, and I'm very excited about it.
And we hope to see it in 2025 at some point.
Oh, I think so. I think before the year is done. Yeah.
Okay. Well, everybody go out and make Henry really happy and pick up a copy of The Bald Dreams of the Sky and look for
Absolutely.
this, look for the later one and look him up on YouTube. Let's see if we could watch some of those old shows. You could definitely see Marilyn. Marilyn is out there. It may be in chunks, but it's out there. And that was a lot of fun. Henry Schipper, thanks for doing this with me.
Thank you, Jeff.